the Knight of Cups may appear, at first glance at least, to be slightly more simple in his symbology than what we saw with the Queen of Cups, of whom was so subtle and fluid that she was intentionally difficult to fathom. Here we can see something different. On the Rider-Waite card, for example, we can see a strong-looking king sat on a stable base in the midst of a storm. He holds these dual symbols of the cups in his hand, representing balance, and appears to be a mature and approachable king. The Knight of Cups here in the Thoth is fire in water, and fire in water is rather odd, and certainly appears to be contradictory in nature, and indeed it suggests that there is a conflict and an instability in the nature of this card, and of the character of our actual knight here. Of course, fire in water can easily go wrong. They don't necessarily mix very well. If I poured water over fire, it would put it out, and if fire was placed too close to water or near it, it may make it evaporate, or steam, or become so hot that it burns us. A balance is needed if fire and water are to be placed together in order to stop, or at least reduce, the possibility of a reaction ruining one of them. On the Tree of Life, this card as a knight or a king is to be found in Shokmar, and so it's male creative energy. And this card in particular is Shokmar in Briar, and Briar is associated with creation and wisdom and that desire to create. And so what we have here is a knight of whom is charging forth with this real power to create, and it can even be to create as in procreation, in that he wants to start a family, so to speak, and also to create as in to build and to make in the physical world. Again, something of which requires balance. We can't procreate without the coming together of a mother and father. We can't actually build something without it having a strong foundation and a balanced foundation, like what we saw with the Rider-Waite card. And yet, this knight is very far from that world of unemotional and pure logic. In fact, he is not wearing a crown or a helmet upon his head, and strangely enough here, he is actually the only court card to not wear a hat or a helmet, or to have something behind them that could look like a hat or helmet. And so this shows that he is really welcoming and open, and he's also very trusting, because if he's charging through this environment not wearing a helmet, he would be inherently at danger for doing so. And so it shows that he is trusting us not to attack him, metaphorically speaking. And so he's saying, now come on, I'm not going into battle. I'm not this fighting type of knight. I'm above and beyond all that. And he's asking us not to fight as well. So he's saying, lay down your sword. Let's be the better person for not battling, for example. And yet also it can simply show that perhaps on his journey he's clearly in a state of quite fast movement on this card. And so he's on the move, he's out to explore the world. He's certainly not going to be in a place long enough to become a political enemy of somebody, for example, or to forge alliances with anything that would end up in him being sent to battle. He is above and beyond all that, and if it did come to him being sent into battle, it'd be on his horse and away. He is, however, wearing a suit of armour of which we can see, and there is a green colour to this, a tinge of green coming out all throughout it. And these are the elements of the natural world of which we see all around us, elements that he carries within himself as part of his being. These elements specifically are the growth of the green earth and its eternal renewal, and so that eternal journey of which he is on. And so of course we see this in the world all around us. Beautiful flowers and grasses and trees spring into life in spring. They gradually die away and then come back again the next year. And so it's showing that there is, in his personality and in the things of which he symbolises to the person of whom draws the card, a desire for growth, a desire for renewal and of new experience. He doesn't want to become stagnant, and that's why he pushes on with this journey, and also why he has these wonderful wings. Now the wings are a multifaceted symbol of which we will return to, and in their most simple form they are the active part of water. And so it's water surging on. It's like waves in the card, the strong surging seas, of which forever changes and forever refreshes and renews. And he also rides upon this white horse, a beautiful and strong animal of which carries him on, and in its most simple form, again, the white is purity, and so it shows that his vision and his determining force through this journey is really pure. So it really isn't battle and conquest and all that type of thing. It's rather love and compassion and intuition, which rises above those lower forms, and this is a symbol we will again return to as we go on. Taken as a whole, the horse and the winged knight almost look like Pegasus. Now, the horse itself hasn't got any wings, but rather the symbol as an entire card, and this can show the element of balance of which is required in order for this knight to become who he is, and in order to keep that fiery element of water stable. Pegasus, of course, rides both on heaven and earth. It could gallop amongst the rocks of the earth and fly amongst the clouds of the sky, and so it's a coming together, and as above so below, as we saw with the previous card, and so it's showing that there is an inherent balance required in order to rise above these lower forms, for instance, and that type of thing. And also it shows that what carries him onwards through his journey is balanced. It's diplomatic. He's not going to get into conflict, and so he doesn't need his helmet, because he already knows that he's not going to go down those routes. And we can see that in him holding out the cup in front of him, and so this comes first and foremost, this grail-like cup. And of course the cup is a deeply feminine symbol. It's that womb of creation that we've seen before, the fertile symbol. And so that in itself actually creates balance to him, and balance is his entire consciousness. And more importantly here, we can see that within the cup is actually the crab. And so this is the symbol astrologically of Cancer, which shows sensitivity and compassion, and also the love of the home, the creation of the home, such as the shell of the crab. And so this is why this card is often described as being somebody whom would be like a good father, for example, or somebody of whom would want to build a home. Going slightly more deeper into it, the cup, as the symbol of the divine female, is of course the moon. And so it's the moon in Cancer, astrologically. And this shows an even deeper sense of fulfillment with our loved ones, and being surrounded with our loved ones and caring for them and them caring for us. And also of the regenerative quality of water. So just as the wings show those surging waves and the regeneration of water, we see it here as well. Crustaceans in general regenerate their shells, they shed their shells almost like a snake, and they do this in order to grow. They lose that hard outer layer to grow. It's called molting. And so just as a crab loses the shell on its back and would become vulnerable, of course, in that state, and yet would also grow, it again shows him without his helmet on and in a state of growth and of coming together into a compassion and rising above the lower emotions. We see this most strongly with the symbol at the bottom of the card here, that being the peacock. Now, this can first and foremost show something else of a conflict, like we saw with the fire and water. The peacock means different things to different cultures. It is historically unlucky and even feared in the West, whereas concerned with perception, wisdom, and the inner self in the East. We see peacock gods such as Mayura, of which is the Sanskrit word for peacock and is a sacred bird in Hindu mythology. And interestingly here, this deity kills a snake, of which is symbolic of Ouroboros and the cycling of time, and it therefore shows the overcoming of time, and with it the overcoming of the ego, and again the lower forms of vibration such as we've been seeing through this card. In strictly Western terms, however, this peacock symbol represents vanity, and we've seen this in art throughout times where the peacock shows pride and vanity in a more sinful nature, for example, and that sort of thing. And so this is simply because the peacock struts and shows its feathers and its colours to try to attract a mate, and therefore can represent the folly of certain types of behaviour. And certainly with this knight representing the dual nature as seen with the divine feminine here, and the fact that he is a male character, it's showing ego, it's showing vanity within the sphere of masculinity within that regard. And so what's happening here is that the knight is leaping or jumping over the peacock. And even more than that, it could be said that his wings are actually lifting him literally above it. He's flying above it. And so what this shows is that he has ascended from vanity and ego, just as we saw with the Hindu deity killing the snake. His journey brings him to a spiritual love and a sensitivity and a balance, and he knows that if he doesn't have this balance, then fire and water, things are going to be snuffed out, or they're going to become too hot. And so he needs that balance. He doesn't want a war going on in his own mind or anywhere else, and so he knows that he has to leap above that type of behaviour, because it's only going to create the madness of melancholy, as Crowley describes it in the Book of Thoth. And so to draw this card asks us to look at this knight as one of maturity. He is a very mature character, and he shows a compassion and a nature of which would be very calm in order to stop a conflict from occurring. And so maybe there's a conflict in our lives, and we could stop it from boiling over, so to speak, by keeping those elements in check. And it shows that we have the qualities of all of the wonders in the world within ourselves. We have the god and the goddess within ourselves, and by putting them together we can metaphorically jump over the peacock on our horse. And so what it's saying is, through balance with compassion and understanding, we can be capable of very high levels of spiritual development. And we will feel that and know it in our intuition when we have, so to speak, got our wings, because we will feel that we are able to rise above the things of which may have been keeping us in a particular state, and now we are free from them. And this new freedom will show in our consciousness, in ourselves, and the people around us, our loved ones, will thank us for it, because they too will see that change, allowing us to love and to grow together.